Hello, everybody, and welcome to ICMDA webinars. I'm Dr. Peter Saunders, your host, the Chief Executive of the International Christian Medical and Dental Association, which brings together about 60,000 Christian doctors, dentists, and students from 107 affiliated national movements worldwide. And today on ICMDA webinars, we're honored to have back Jelena Sivulka to speak to us on the subject of limits to compassion. If you're new to ICMDA webinars, this is how it works. Jelena will speak for about half an hour or so, and then we'll have a time of question and answer following that. And you can put your questions to her through the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, not the chat, but the Q&A. You can upvote other people's questions as well. We've got a translation today into two languages, that's Spanish and Chinese, and then you can access that through the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. That's the little globe down there. Just click on that and make your selection. Today's session will be recorded as per usual. We won't be broadcasting on Facebook today, but the video will be available from our website in the next few days, along with some other resources as well. So it's this subject of limits to compassion, and compassion is the emotional response to another's suffering and the desire to help. Limits to compassion arise when constant exposure to suffering leads to compassion fatigue, causing emotional and physical exhaustion. Jelena will share her experiences and insights on recovering from compassion fatigue and rediscovering compassion satisfaction. She'll also discuss strategies like reconnecting with one's motivation for helping, fostering supportive relationships, and engaging in activities that renew purpose and joy. These practices help individuals regain resilience and continue in providing effective care. Jelena Sivulka was born and raised in Serbia, where she got her master's degree in psychology and in theology. She became a Christian 25 years ago, and a few years later got involved in ministry with her husband, Greg, planting churches, distributing humanitarian aid, and partnering with Joni and friends, serving people with disabilities. Jelena has also worked as a counselor in Serbia's schools and a social worker, and she's currently working as a therapist in a medical clinic. She's the founder and director of the non-profit organization Hannah's Hope, and she has been blessed with 3 children, Benjamin, Sarah, and Hannah, who has autism. So Jelena, it's a great honor and privilege to have you back here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really look forward to hearing what you have to say and to engaging with you in the Q&A later. Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, and thank you for this amazing privilege to be here again with you guys. I should have sent you actually a little bit renewed and newer bio, but that's okay. I'm still mother of 3, psychologist, psychotherapist, and for the last couple of years building counseling schools in the MENA region and helping people that go through a hard time to help the others and serve the others. Today's topic, and actually let me share the screen, and limits to compassion. It is sadly the topic that I've spoke many times, but it's something that I've experienced very often when we come to the limits of caring for the others. As Peter mentioned, I'm psychologist, I'm therapist, I've been in ministry. My passion is seeing the body of Christ and the church caring for the ones that are hurting, for the ones that are stigmatized, for the people with disability, people with mental health issues. And again, being in a ministry and working in the area that I do, it is exhausting. Being a mother of a child with severe autism, Hannah is now 19. It's been extremely exhausting. But actually, let me start with the story that happened in Seattle, Washington, 2001. It was a young girl in the early morning in Seattle that decided actually one day she just parked her car in the middle of the ship canal bridge, and she climbed the edge and contemplated whether she should end her life. Despite the police officers trying to convince her not to jump, it was early morning, the people were going to work, and there were cars just backing and the mob arousing, and they started actually cheering her to end her life. She will jump, and she suffered severe injuries. Media coverage was the part of all of this and part of this story. And the media coverage was partially, I mean, there to, because of the tragedy of these young women, but actually the shock that they were covering was the way that the mob reacted. They were cheering and encouraging her to jump so that they can actually go to work. This story, you can find it in a newspaper, but you can also, it was actually, I found it in a book that was written by James White. And in his book, Wrestling with God, he asked a question: what prompts people armed with cell phones in time, sitting still in traffic, and with the ability to assist, to respond with such anger and contempt? How come something like this, it is very, as I mentioned, the compassion is something that is very natural to human beings. Compassion is something oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, here, the emotional response. When we perceive the suffering, there's our desire to help there. It's just a natural human response to suffering. But before we go into this, you're going to get all of this. You're going to get as a PDF. And I would really encourage you. You're going to find it. It's on this page, and maybe twice you're going to see it. Actually, it is a little test that you can go to. It's free. It's online and Procol measure. And it's not just in English. You're going to find it in different languages, but actually measures how we are how are our limits to compassion, how is our burnout, and measure actually where we stand and how we are doing. So as I put here before we start, I would really love you to consider and later on go and do it to see where you are and how you are doing. And once in a while, even when somebody comes to my office, I would ask them, so how are you? What is your body telling you? And how are you doing? And one of the questions that sometimes I ask, which seems very simple, and I actually even ask myself, is how old are you? How old do you feel you are? And there are days, I'm 50, I just turned 50, but there are days when I feel like I'm 20, but there are days when I feel very, very old and very tired. I can feel every bone in my body. I'm aching, I'm overwhelmed by burden. So it is really, our body is trying to talk to us and tell us. And even though most of you are in the business of body, in the business of trying to understand the symptoms and help the ones and understand what's happening and help and heal, we tend to neglect what our own body is telling us and what our own soul is telling us. So as I mentioned, compassion is something very, very natural that every human, I mean, seeing the suffering, we should react, and our react should be to help, to alleviate suffering of the people around us and that surround us. And also what comes really, the pleasure of helping others, it is compassion, satisfaction that we also experience. It derives from being able to do our work well and to help others. And these are some of the quotes that the people will say: I love helping people feel better. It is a wonderful opportunity to help others. Many often the people that are in the business of helping, in a business of mental health, in any type of social workers, counselors, doctors, it is very we all feel that satisfaction in helping. It is reward that we feel. There's no other feeling compared to helping someone who is struggling. And actually, I remember when I first started doing therapy, I was so excited to help somebody be better, feel better, regain the energy for life and the joy in life. But I mean, here are some more rewards. What are the rewards that we feel? We personally feel better mental and physical health. It speeds up recovery of diseases, actually, the rewards of compassion. So, for example, if we want to help somebody kind of regain the self-esteem, if they're dealing with a lower self-esteem or even anxiety and depression, giving them opportunity to serve, giving them an opportunity to help the ones that are hurting can really alleviate their suffering. Strengthens our immune system. Well, I mean, these are some of the facts you can even find online, and there are some of the links here you can go to. But somehow in a good story, this can go, let me just put this down so I can, okay, there we go. There are things that can happen in compassion fatigue that we can experience. Actually, it is a natural consequence. If we constantly give, and give, if we don't withdraw, if we don't take care of ourselves, this is the path that some of us are on, or that some of us have been on, or it could be a path that we are, I don't know, flirting with, feeling stressed, feeling fatigued, experiencing burnout, and then secondary trauma or vicarious trauma, and even PTSD. And as you're gonna see, I'm gonna talk kind of like giving you like this ladder, what are the steps. And as you can imagine, in our lives, in human life, nothing really goes, simple. So it doesn't mean that you'll have to go through every single stage or to go and experience, or that if you are helping, that you're gonna experience any of this. Compassion fatigue, it can be on a spectrum from mild to severe. It could be just a loss of empathy. So the feeling of physical and emotional exhaustion, feeling that you have nothing else to give. So these are some of the symptoms. May or not include secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. It could lead to severe mental health issues. It doesn't have to. This is Rembrandt's picture of Paul, and I'm going to mention Paul later on, but I think it is so these are some of the stages of compassion fatigue. So from compassion satisfaction, we can feel compassion satisfaction kind of merge or mashed with a compassion fatigue, then compassion fatigue, and burnout. As I said, nothing really goes smoothly, and this is a science of everything that can happen. It's kind of like mixed and matched. There is not the perfect formula how to go. But these are, and you're going to get these slides, so I'm not going to go deep into what are some of the stages, how you can recognize, but it's really good to recognize and know the difference between the stress, for example, and a burnout. So it's kind of from feeling good and then feeling just overwhelmed to not knowing when to say no, to being drained and exhausted, and to actually feel numb. It is so kind of like what was happening with the mob, what happens with us when we see the people hurting, what happens with us when we hear the statistics that today the children that are involved in human trafficking, the number is higher than the slavery. So how does that move us, or we just change the channel? And how do we respond to the suffering in the world, or even to the story of somebody sitting across from us, where we can actually even bring damage? Or if we neglect ourselves, we can certainly bring damage not just to ourselves, but to the others that we work with and are around us. So as I said, you're going to have the slides, so sorry for not going into detail. And in 30 minutes certainly is not enough, but burnout is a state of emotional, it's deeper than just compassion fatigue, is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion. And the test that I gave you, that you can go online and do it can really show you on a burnout scale where you are. And it's a prolonged and excessive stress that we're constantly doing, constantly being, not taking care of yourselves and neglecting yourself. And it can lead there. So these are just the differences that I put here, so you can see what are the differences between what actually stress is in a burnout. And it really helps people to know that, okay, now this is more than just stress. And it's so interesting that it's easier for us to recognize others So I think like even listening to this, we can like think of, okay, I know this person or this colleague that is maybe flirting with a burnout. And it's really hard for us to recognize when we are not well. And it is really good to be surrounded with people that can help us there. So these are some of the things that you can kind of like see, okay, this is stress. This is kind of now more a burnout. It's the title of the book that made a huge success, When a Body Keeps the Score. So I kind of use that saying, so what is your body telling you? And there are different things you can even Google just to see what are the things that you can sit down and you can just draw a picture of like little, human being and just listen to yourself. Where do you feel? What do you feel? Where does it hurt? In what area? What is happening? Just start asking yourself the questions, just kind of like in therapy, we call that an empty chair. When we want to have a conversation with somebody, have a conversation with yourself, have a conversation with your body, with your soul, with every corner of your being, asking yourselves, so what is happening? How am I doing? Why am I snappy? Why am I moody? Why am I impatient? Why am I tired constantly? So some of the things that it's important to do. I love Diane Langberg's book, and you can find a lot of her on a Focal website, her talks, and even in her book on oh, I'm gonna remember later. I've just lost it. But she wrote many books. But a therapist, counselor, Christian, she wrote, "You cannot deal with an endless line of needy and broken people and not at least struggle intermittently with a burnout." So I really don't want you guys now to feel, because I mean, I don't have enough time actually to go into all the details. So what do we do? So this pretty much what I'm doing. It's kind of like mostly is giving you a mirror, and hopefully you're going to see yourself. Where am I? How am I doing? Am I well? But I also don't want you to feel guilty over that. Just please know that in a line of needy and broken people, it is natural and normal to be overwhelmed and exhausted. So what is the secondary traumatic stress? It's associated with, it's related to secondary exposure, with the traumatic events that the people went through. So the problems due to exposure of trauma that some people are experiencing, just being there, listening. And I'm going to have a list who actually is prone to experiencing secondary trauma. Some of the factors that contribute to this is occupational hazard. So the nature of working as a helper means that your exposure to suffering. I mean, it is a cost of caring. Individual factors, what is happening in your life. If I go home to a screaming child, of course, there is so much stress there. If you're taking care of an elderly parents, if there is stress in a home, if you're single, there are things, if you're part of the good divine society, meaning being part of good church, that helps. If you have a good social capital, that really certainly helps. But these are some of the things to kind of see. What are the cultural factors? The idea that we need to help. If we are not going to help, who's going to do it? We have to respond. It's very important. So, and I would add here even like just briefly, I'm going to touch the iffy subject, the actually false theology that we need to do it if somebody is in our life, that we have to respond, that we have to, that is the calling to go and do. It is so heavy and burdened on us that if you're not going to do it, who else is going to do it? God's not going to give you more than you can handle. It's totally twisted. Bible can really push us even further on this path. When does it occur? I mean, when we're exposed to secondary traumatic stress, when we listen to the story. So like some of these things are very familiar in secondary traumatic stress, of how does that affects us? I mean, how do we just work? How does that we experience affect the way we view the world around us? And this is some of the things: the sense of safety, ability to trust others, self-esteem, intimacy, sense of control. As you can see, very major area. It seems that the picture of the whole world and the relationship, it is distorted when we are not well. who will experience secondary trauma. And it's, as you can see, you guys are really high there on the list, the first responders, but nurses, physicians, child protective workers, children traumatized parents, and trauma care workers, counselors. So there are many red flags, just giving and giving, and in a work of giving, and in a world that is needy and broken, it is you're very exposed to this. So what can we do? And I'm so sorry that it took me this long to come to this, and we are going to briefly go through this too. What are some of the things? And if you have time, I don't know, print this, go through this. So what are the things when it comes to life balance? What does that mean? How can my life, how does, like, draw a day, how does one of your day looks like? Like, even in therapy, I will ask somebody to tell me their typical day. When do you wake up? What are the things that you do? The routine is very, very helpful, actually. It is very soothing. So what do we do? What do we do to relax? How do we tell our body that it's okay to let go? Nature is very powerful. I remember Diane Langberg, Suffering in the Heart of God, it's the book. She will say that she will listen to Bach. She will say that she will go for walks. She's expert in sexual abuse, and she works with Christians. So if they're listening and listening to so many horrible stories, how do we vent? How do we let go? So what are the things? Find the language of the soul, of your soul. Very often I will mention that. If there's other way that you can tell what you went through a song, through a poem, if you can journal, if you can draw, if you can paint, please do it. Remember what are the things that you did as a child that you enjoyed doing. So kind of help the child in you regain that joy for life by listening to that child. Assertive training, learn to say no, being passive and being aggressive. There's a choice to be, assertive, and learn to buy time. The people say the Churchill used to smoke, so he will actually buy time, and he will just kind of like I'm not telling you to start, smoking cigars, but just learn to just take time. Tell people that you need time to decide if you're going to say yes. Learn to take time. Communication skills, cognitive restructuring. What are the things that, that you're going to, actually, that's maybe the hardest, to think differently, not to take it too personally or to take it too much on you and then to burden yourself. Time management, plan for coping. And as you can see, I'm going really fast. So I'm going to repeat myself here a little bit. So what are some of the things that you can do? Yes, focus on self-care. Write different areas of your life, like you as your body, your soul, your social being, your spiritual being. So how can you take care of yourself in different areas? Journaling can be one of those, the language of your soul. Seeking professional help. This is maybe the hardest to recognize if you need it, if you need somebody to talk to. I will sometimes say, when I realize that I'm leaking, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. If I tell to my friends or my family members, I bring my job to them, telling them, oh my gosh, I had a client. Of course, I don't tell the name, but when I'm leaking, when the stories that I'm hearing are kind of like pouring, and then I know that I need time to withdraw and actually do the supervision, and that is a must to every counselor. But also venting and sharing to trusting friend that will watch your back, pray for you, that will say and recognize you're not well, you need help. Ask the people around you. I mean, it's join the support group, share with others that can understand, learn the new self-care strategies. There are many, there are a lot of things you can do. I mean, today the world is bursting with, ideas how you can help yourself. So, but ask for help and recognize certainly a success when you're doing better. And it's what the most important thing is, that there is just, this story doesn't have to end in PTSD and secondary trauma. It can also bring the resilience and the growth in us. So what can we do? Personally, self-care and social support, but professional, healthy boundaries, peer consultation, refer. It's one of the things that we teach all the counselors. Learn when to refer and refer to others. and learning really to understand that's their story, that's not your story. And also that is very important, the story is not finished. It is very powerful, especially when the parents are dealing with the kids in the midst of trauma and chaos. We have to understand that's not the end story. There is a possibility, and that Churchill heard that. I'm certainly mentioning Churchill a lot here, but when he heard that actually what a grim situation in France is during the Second World War, and just the bad news, and this is his response. I find it rather inspiring. Sometimes I sit down and I sit and wonder and marvel, what is God gonna do in a life of somebody that just seems that there is no open door, and like just what our God, and our God is an amazing God. So what will he do in where we are, but what surrounds us, and but also I would love to encourage you to sit down and also breathe and realize what is surrounding you. Because sometimes even realizing, if I have a child with disability, and if my parents are aging, and if this and this, like if I just kind of mention the things in my life, it makes sense. So what is surrounding you? Some of the things that I would love to encourage you, it is to actually, these 3 years of your life, in 3 questions to ask yourself. Who are you? Be reminded that who created you and what is your identity, and whom do you belong? Who is your father? And what has he promised you? So who are you? Who is watching your back? Who is praying for you? Who is around you? Who are the people that you have beside you? Stop, recognize, acknowledge, give thanks to them. And who are you talking to? A few stories in the Bible, they're one of my favorite. It is a Samaritan woman, and I love when he tells her, if you would just know who you're talking to. I think very often we have a very quick, quiet time, not really realizing, who are we talking to? The story of the woman that was dealing with 12 years of hemorrhage, and you remember the story that she just wanted to touch his robe. One thing that I always am interested in that story is that when he stopped everybody, there's a mob, there's a crowd, everybody's pushing. And I mean, you have to go to Middle East and just experience that mob, or maybe India, just to understand, I mean, in the West, we are so prone to my personal space. There was no personal space there. And everybody's touching him, and he says, who touched me? And my shock is that we have only one story, that there is only one woman that touched him for who he is. So who are we talking to? Who do we belong to? I love, and you can use this as your quiet time. When Paul comes to, and there were, stories of Elijah and Moses and people, or Jeremiah, when they just stopped wondering, what am I doing here? And how can I continue? And we see in Acts 18, 9 and 10, that God encouraged him. But we also see actually in 1 Corinthians, the 2, when he says, I came to you in fear and trembling. And I love that God comes to him and said, do not be afraid. Go and speak. Go and continue doing what you're doing. I am with you, and no one will attack you. I am the one that is watching your back, and I have many. You're not alone. So, certainly one of my favorite verses. Do you not know that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? Who are you, and who do you belong to? So these are some of the things that I put here that are so familiar, and there's nothing new here. To retreat, to remind yourself how important it is to be silent. When was the last time when you were silent in your prayer? When you were silent in your quiet time? The right speech comes out of the silence, and the right silence comes out of the speech, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. But the importance of just being quiet there. learning to fast, learning to come back to, we are so overwhelmed, not just with food, but with everything, with social media, with the needs, with a broken world. So there are different forms of fasting. But being reminded actually that he is the one that needs to fulfill our longing and our needs. The power of divine community, let us not neglect something that we have, and it's so powerful. It's this connecting with each other. It is coming to worship, healing of dignity, finding who we really are. It's Peter Cesare that says, it is not that our DNA or the families that we belong to or grow up that defined what our future is. It is the family of God, and it's our identity in Christ. So sharing our stories, that is so powerful. And healing of solidarity, safe and embracing environment. I mean, the healthy attachment that we can build in a connection with God, in a connection with each other, are very, very powerful, and a very powerful spiritual and a social capital that we can build in and have. And actually, this is my last slide, and I love that actually, not even in the middle of his ministry, Jeremiah is going to doubt, Jeremiah is going to be overwhelmed, Jeremiah is going to say a lot of harsh things to God. But I love God's response. If you're tired from running a foot race, how will you race against horses? Is there a human being that can race with the horses? And if Jeremiah is tired, why is God telling him there is more? And let me actually put one more thing that you can, if you're taking the notes or if you want to take the notes. Recently I started actually studying Revelation, and I love it, love it. But one thing I've not, William Barclay mentioned the 3-door in Revelation 3 and 4 that is mentioned. And it's in Revelation 3, we have that he's standing at the door in front of the church, knocking at the door. But then there's also, you're going to see it and read Revelation 3 and 4, the 3-door, the door of opportunity, the door of your heart, and the door of heaven. And invite Jesus to be the ruler in your heart and in your soul. Ask Jesus to show you the opportunities and the calling that he has given you here on earth. And do not neglect and forget who is waiting for us, and actually what our home is and when our identity is. With all of that, it is whatever tomorrow brings, whatever story that we hear on news, whatever story we see in our offices, nothing can trumps who our God is, where our identity lays, who our Father is, and who is in control of all of this. So I guess preparing for the running with the, we're actually racing with the horses. There's the only way to actually do it. It's by his grace and his mercy and his help. So thank you. I'm sorry for rushing through all of this, and I hope this can be helpful.
Thank you so much, Jelena. And we gave you quite an extraordinary brief for half an hour, and you had so much stuff there, and I know you could have spoken at great length on more of it, but thank you for giving us a really comprehensive overview of the issues. And you're speaking, of course, to people who, as you say, are right at the top of the vulnerable list in terms of stress and burnout and all the rest. So we've got a time of Q&A now, and you can put your questions to Jelena through the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. You can upvote other people's questions there as well, and we'll try to pick those up in discussion. So put your questions there, not in the chat. Just a reminder that today's session was recorded, and you will get a copy, a PDF of the entire presentation later so that you can look back, and particularly perhaps look at that test that you can do online that will give you some valued personal insight as well. Just a reminder today also that we've got translation into Spanish and Chinese, and you can access that through the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. So first question here, Jelena, just picks up on the question of wrong theology and the fact that we have a lot of, unhelpful things often that we say to each other. But what you said about using wrong theology, rationalizing, burning yourself out. And the writer says, I particularly appreciated and recognize what you said about secondary traumatic stress. And here's the question, is there evidence that this even extends to what we see on TV or the internet, social media, and read in the news having this effect on us? And where does being affected or shocked become unhelpful? In other words, where does compassion and empathy end and indifference and callousness start? So these picking up not necessarily the pressures that we're meeting in the clinic or in the workplace or in family or community, but actually the stuff that we're exposed to through media and social media particularly.
I mean, it's so there are, more than one thing. And I know that it's an iffy topic when I talk about, and I do talk, how can a wrong theology actually hurt us, especially when I talk to counselors, how important it is to have the healthy theology of suffering and healthy theology of pain. We all have it. We all have our own thoughts and ideas why suffering and why pain. It is very important for us to be aware why we think about that, because when we talk and share and counsel and help others, it really affects what we believe. I mean, it's affected by our faith and our beliefs. And I remember, like, personally, I mean, being in a ministry and going through a lot of hardships, how, like, yes, I just mentioned that verse, God's not going to give you more than you can handle. And he was giving us more than we can handle. And he gave Paul more than he can handle. So it is very twisted. It talks about that he's not going to give more than, he's not going to give temptation more than we can handle. It doesn't talk about suffering and pain. So that's kind of like, but I don't think that was even a question there. The question, do we even know how is what we hear today affecting us? I mean, it's, there's still, I don't think we even know today how is, for example, the developing brain affected by the media and phone. How are the babies being just changed because they're, growing with the scrolling on mom's TV, the phone, So that is something that we still have not heard the results of, but the results that we heard is how is that shaping the adults and us. And let me just say, you probably heard of mirroring, that we have a tendency to mirror what we see. So this is just a simple example that it's scary, though. It was, the scientist was just kind of, actually having monkeys connected and watching their EEG and watching what's happening with them, just had a snack. And this is how the neuromirroring was discovered. Having a snack, and the snack was banana. And the monkey brain was showing a positive effect, like he's eating a banana. So when we see a good thing, it really affects us well. So when we see sad and overwhelming things, for a healthy human being, it does affect us. So just now, for us to respond, try watching a movie in 50s and 60s. The story's slow, the communication is very slow. We are bored. So the information that we are getting needs to be faster. It needs to be shocking. That's what sells news. That's what sells. So we are bombarded, the world being transparent more and more with the things that are happening. And there's so much more than we can handle. So in what ways? I mean, there's more and more, and the people that talk about, there are more and more people from a secular world saying that they need sabbatical, they need to withdraw. I think the pandemic of the newer generation, G generation, is actually mental health issues. It's the skyrocketing social anxieties. So, we just kind of see the effects, let me just say, more than, you cannot really do you cannot take 1,000 people in and purposely show them horrible pictures of the war to see how that can affect them. But certainly we are seeing what's happening with the world and the number growing pandemic actually on mental health issues. So that was kind of the answer, I think.
Yeah, and thank you. It's a question here just to ask you to enlarge on what you meant by the three doors. I think the door of opportunity, the door of heaven, and the door of the heart.
I mean,
What did you mean by that?
that should really be the pebble in their shoe so they can go and study this. I mean, or we can go 30 minutes into the study of Revelation. I'm kidding. But it's what I mentioned, the door of opportunity, Revelation 3:8. I have set before you an open door, it says in Revelation 3:8. And then it talks the opportunity, it talks actually to church. That was that sentence was meant to church in Philadelphia. And then it talks to glorious opportunities they have to share the gospel. The second door that is mentioned there is the door of human heart. Behold, says the risen Christ, that's in Revelation 3:20. I stand at the door and knock. At the door of every heart, there comes the knock of that hand, the nail-pierced hand. And then the third door is actually Revelation 4:1. It's, I saw a door in heaven standing open, says this year. So God offers to every man the door which leads to the knowledge of God and a life eternal. I mean, it's in a commentary, he mentioned those three doors, but I don't remember ever seeing them all together there. But also in Hosea 2:14, there is, in the valley of sadness, I'm going to open the door of hope. So my idea here is for all of us to go to the one that created, to go to the one that knows us, to go to the one that we belong to, ask him to be in our heart, the ruler of our heart, ask him to show us the opportunities and where he's calling us to. I mean, he died at the age of 33, serving the last 3 years. So why are we think that we are so important and we need to do for, work for 40 years and just give and give and give? And then again, let's be reminded what this all, where does this end? So once in a while, just read Revelation 5, just to see the end, because it is very powerful, amazing worship, but to know who the ruler is, because it is overwhelming. Just watching the news, it's very sad and overwhelming.
Yeah, and it's so important, isn't it, to remind ourselves who we serve. As you said before, just think who it is we're talking to or listening to each day to help things put into perspective. Now, the issue of putting things in perspective, and you quoted that verse from Jeremiah 12, where Jeremiah's undergoing one of his self-destructs and woe is me, and I wish I'd never been born, and so on. And God seems to speak in a way to him quite harshly. If you can't keep up with the
running on a foot race.
If you can't run a foot race, how will you keep up with the horses? And I think he also says, if you're stumbling in safe country, then how are you going to survive in the forests of Lebanon? In a way, it's quite tough talk, isn't it? And it just this question of what we can fall into, in a sense, self-pity sometimes inappropriately. And what we need then is not necessarily more sort of understanding and stroking, but something a little tougher than that. Could you just perhaps elaborate a bit on the tough love of God in these situations?
Well, it's one thing that is important before I go there, and it was part of my quiet time this morning, and I tell you what I really was that it was in Revelation 5, and who's going to open the scroll and who's going to do it. There's nobody there. So John is crying. And actually there's a kind of like, I think it's 5:4, somebody comes to John and says, stop crying. And it's like, there is somebody, there is a solution there. And I think I love that there was the whole time somebody who can open the scroll and he's crying. I mean, he didn't need to be sad and cry. I mean, the moment when nobody's doing it, I get it. But even with the Jeremiah, I love how Jeremiah is so blunt and open with God. You used me and abused me, And Abraham Heschel says that the word abuse that Jeremiah used is the word that is used what happened to Tamar, David's daughter. So seriously, like, did really Jeremiah say that? You raped me? So Jeremiah
Yeah.
is so open, and God is not being harsh on him for being that open.
Mm.
But then again, God is going to tell him there's still hope, you know. And I love that we love to quote Jeremiah, that he has a future for us, a future of hope. And when he's telling us this future of hope, he's telling that to the people. And then he says, for 70 years, you're going to be stuck here. So pretty much he's telling you who understand this, that there's going to be a good future. You're not going to live to see that.
Mm.
I mean, it's even if we cannot see it, there is so much. Our God is bigger. You know, the lamp of God can, you know, is powerful, and he's omnipresent and omnipotent. And I love that it was actually twice in the New Testament when Jesus will say to the grieving mother, stop crying. Um, when it's her child that died, or, you know, Jerry's daughter, when he tells you guys stop crying, you know. And I think we join the crowd of crying and lamenting. Oh, poor me, you know.
Mm.
And I'm good at that. Over the years, I learned how to complain about my child with autism and poor me. And it is exhausting and it's tiring. And poor me, I live in the 21st century. I'm married. Greg and I love Hannah. We have amazing, you know, ministry and support for, I mean, there's just so much good there. And I have a
Mm.
loving God there that I
Mm.
think I think we got familiar with lament, that sometimes even if the future that he holds for us, even it doesn't seem it's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, he's going to tell Jeremiah, go and buy the land. And Jeremiah's going to buy the land where the enemy forces are standing on it. Like, seriously, that is a bad investment. So our God is the God of hope and future. And I think we get stuck with today. And there's nothing wrong with lamenting, but it is wrong to kind of camp there and not see beyond that.
Yeah, beautiful. Seeing things in the context of the future that we might not see, but we know
Mm-hmm.
is coming. Can I just pick up on, you talked about the language of your soul and learning to listen to the language of your soul, and you made references to the kind of things that comforted us or gave us strength in childhood. But what advice would you give someone who's wanting to know how to discover the language of their soul?
Try it. I mean, I remember it was in a hard time. You know, Hannah was just diagnosed, and a friend of mine asked me to come and paint with her. So I'm like, I've not painted since high school, you know, and I had to do it. But I started painting. I love it. I don't know if I'm good at it, but I love it. I did. And actually, even if you're not recognized, like if that gift is not recognized by the others, like saying, "Oh my gosh, you sing amazing," or you paint amazing, if that is the way that you can express, I mean, seriously, just try it. Try painting. Try picking up an instrument if you always wanted to learn how to play music. I mean, I've seen how powerful that is. I'm not really gifted at singing or playing instruments. My family members are, but I can see how I know what they're going through when they pick a song to play on a piano, and how amazing that is. I did sculpting for a year, actually, in a hard time in my life. I was really bad at it, but I just loved it. I would just be there and just sit there. And I mean, I was not even taking classes or, you know, I asked a friend of mine to teach me something. So, and seriously, try to think of yourself when you were 11 or 12. What did you do? How did you look like? What did you do? How was your day? And actually, at that age, we're kind of like our own little being. We already know what we like. We very often remember ourselves at that age, fifth, sixth grade. And that's when we were free. We were still not scolded and molded by this world. We were kind of a free spirit to explore and do things. So think of yourself. What was the things that you love doing? You know, playing sports, go and play sports, join that. I mean, certainly in a Western world, I mean, people are creative. What you can do and what you can try. And so kind of like it is really exploring it very often, as you can hear it probably here, involves actually art. Art is very powerful.
Mm.
Art is very amazing. I mean, there's some books. I think Dave Benner's wife, Juliet Benner, there's a book that she did devotional that is connected with art. So you will see a painting, and then there's devotional and part of the Bible. So even like in your devotional, if you can incorporate that, the pictures of, I don't know, Jesus calming the storm. It is an amazing picture and painting. And it's like connecting that with a story. So try using different kind of like a visual ads even, or any type of like listening when you in your quiet times too. So it is different for everyone. I mean, for every one of us, we are different. So I don't know you at the age of 12 to tell you like try this one.
You talked early on too about the importance of establishing a good routine, and I'm sure many doctors and dentists struggle with this just because of the huge pressure of the job. It seems to be relentless. But how does any advice about building routine into the right kind of routine into one's life that's going to be protective and and strengthening?
I think it's a good thing to actually know for example, how your typical day look like. So kind of like just screen that. And also like what your diet is, how much sleep do you have? Like seriously, just how often do you exercise? And I'm an old school, so I love things like this. I love, writing down. So what I learn when I know what is good for me, for example, to exercise regularly, to do the stretches, to go for a walk, I write that down. The way I write down, I have to meet with somebody, I have a Zoom meeting, I'm gonna have coffee with this person. Write down the things as kind of like as a must, 3 times a week, and totally take that like from 2 to 3, this is what I'm doing, or from 5 to 6. Just write it down there in a schedule. I mean, and when you look at it, you're gonna know you're busy. But even a simple thing is going to bed early, having a good and healthy diet. I mean, saying no is so powerful, but probably the most important thing is if you have a good night of sleep so the good day starts with going to bed on time. In one way, getting older, that is helpful because you're exhausted by the end of the day. So I think we actually are better at being wiser how to start the next day by going to bed earlier. So it's really kind of screening where you are and what is missing in that routine. And then I really tell the people to start with the body, to start with sleep, start with food, start with exercises, and then add. When we gain strength there, we can add healthy things. Having coffee with people that are really important in my life, or having time for my family, spending time with my kids. Just write it down and learn to make it a priority, because if we don't do that, the life and the circumstances around us are going to make choices for us. What I mean by that, if you don't put your body and you don't take care of yourself and your soul and your spiritual being, very quickly we're going to feel overwhelmed, stressed, burned, sick, tired. And then decision is being made by our emotions, our weakness, our sickness, or the burden the others put on us. So let us gain the power of even putting that structure in our life.
Is reading books a language of the soul, as someone's asking?
It certainly is. And I don't know how hard, to me, the end of the good day, and I don't know, I think it's biblical, but I don't know if somebody's going to scold me on this, is having a good glass of wine and reading a good book. So if I can end every day with that, it is yes, yes, yes. And I plan the vacation, you guys. Because I'm so busy reading the book that I need to read, then there are books that I want to just read for fun. And through the whole year, I will search, and I will collect, so that when I go on a vacation, I take 6 to 7 books on a day vacation. So I'm just reading. And oh my gosh, I have a list of books that I will totally recommend, or good movies to watch. So yes, 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 I totally think it is. For me, it is eating chestnuts, having a good Cabernet, and reading a good book. That is just the end of every single day if I can have it.
Yeah, great. So, and the importance
Fire
being
in the background.
of finding what really works for you, isn't it? And just a final question, because we're almost running out of time here, but you've made a lot of references to the Christian community and friends and support from people and so on. Just any word of advice about cultivating the right kind of friends who are going to help us when perhaps we're lacking insight into the fact that we're slipping down the path to burnout? What some words about friends, the ones perhaps to limit time with, and those who are going to be really helpful for us.
Well, I love to ask people who is before you, who is behind you, and who is beside you. So I think it's once in a while in lifetime, it's really good to stop and see who are the people that we look up to, who are the people that through history or our mentors, who are we looking up to, who's before me that was doing this ministry, doing that I respected, you know. So who is before me? Who is beside me? Who are the people that really know me and I can call and they can pray for whatever I am? If you don't have people beside you, stop down and build that. Build the people beside you. So, and then step in whatever you are in. And let me just say, do not neglect the powerful army of gray people, gray heads in our church. Ask the old ladies, ask the people to pray for you in your ministry. And who's behind you? Who are the young people that follow you, that are there, that show up, that you spend time with? Who are you investing in? So I think that's who is surrounding us. And it's kind of like, when Moses in a battle, who was holding his arms so that he can win. We all need people holding our arms while we are in a battle. I see the question was Diane Langberg is, and there's her quote, and Suffering in the Heart of God is the book, but any book on Diane Langberg is highly recommended.
Brilliant. Well, sadly, we're going to have to stop there. We could go on quite a lot longer, but thank you so much, Jelena, again, for your time and your wisdom and sharing. And people will be pleased to be reminded that the slides are all available in PDF format. We'll be sending those to you, along with a link to the video, so you can pass it on to others or perhaps watch it again yourselves. And we will add some of these references as well that we'll get from Jelena into the letters for other things that you can follow up on. And then it just remains for me to say thanks again to Jelena and to all of you for coming along and contributing with your questions and being involved. So may the Lord bless you. We hope to see you again soon on ICMDA webinars. Thank you.